So how
You
do you
just
deal with that when the New Testament says one thing, and then when you go to the Tanakh, it's not talking about the same thing, even though the New Testament says it is. Like, how do
give me
you
an
deal
example.
with that?
Give me an example, and then we can discuss it. Give me an example.
Like the first book of the first book of the New Testament, Matthew chapter 1, where it talks
Mm-hmm.
about the virgin birth, and it points to Isaiah chapter 7. When you go to Isaiah chapter 7, it says
Mm-hmm.
that baby have to be born within 65 years. There is no way that can be about Jesus if that baby had to be born within 65 years.
Okay, you want to go there?
Yeah, we can go there.
Yeah.
Isaiah chapter 7. All right, and we're gonna start at verse 1 because I like to read, so I hope you don't get I like to read. So
Bro,
Isaiah,
I'm an avid reader, bro.
let's get to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
some people when you having Bible discussions, people just want to hear arguing. They don't want to hear you read the book, right?
I know. I
Right.
know.
So verse 1, it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, that the son of Uzzah, king of Judah, that Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up to Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it. Right. So, and then this is not, I'm sure you know this, but just for the people listening. So this is talking about how two kings, one from Aram and one from the northern kingdom, goes up to war against the southern kingdom, but they could not prevail. Right. So that's what verse 1 is talking about. Verse 2. And it was told to the house of David, saying, Aram is confederate with Ephraim, so the Syrians is confederate with the northern kingdom, and his heart was moved, and the heart of his people as the trees of the forest are moved with the wind. So the king of the house of David gets told that, yo, the northern kingdom in Syria is coming against you, and he gets scared, right? Verse 3. Then said the Lord unto Isaiah, Go now, meet Ahaz, thou and Shur-Jeshub thy son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fullest field, and say unto him, Keep calm, be quiet, fear not, neither let thy heart be faint, because of these two tails of smoke and firebrands, for the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram, and the son of Remaliah. So God sends Isaiah to tell Ahaz, like, yo, don't be scared of Rezin and Pekah. Don't be scared of them. Right? Verse 5. Because Aram has counseled evil against thee, Ephraim also, the son of Remaliah, saying, Let us go up against Judah and vex it, and let us make a breach therein for us, and set up a king in the midst of it, even the son of Tabil. Thus it. So he says, yo, they're gonna try to come take your kingdom and put a king on your throne. That's what he tells them, but he tells them, don't be scared. Verse 7, thus said the Lord, it shall not stand. So those two people that's coming against Judah, the Syrians in the northern kingdom, that's coming to take his kingdom and put a king on it, God sends Isaiah to tell him it's not going to stand, right? It shall not stand, neither shall it come to pass. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years, so that's 65 years right there, right? One score is 20, 3 is 60, plus 5, that's 65 years. Within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, that it be not a people, and the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is Remaliah's son. If you will not have faith, surely ye shall not be established. So he tells them, yo, don't be scared of these two people that's coming to do this, because they're going to be broken within 65 years, right? Verse 10. And the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask thee a sign of the Lord thy God, asking neither in the depth or in the height above. So he tells King Ahaz to ask a sign so he know that this is going to come to pass. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, neither will I try the Lord. So Ahaz said, like, I'm not going to ask for no sign. Verse 13, and he said, Hear ye now, O house of David. It's a small thing that you weary men, that you weary my God also. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. So King Ahaz didn't want to ask. So the Lord himself is giving him a sign. Why is he giving him a sign? So that he can know that the northern kingdom and Syria would be broken within 65 years and that they're not going to defeat him. Right? Verse 14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Curd and honey shall he eat, when he knoweth to refuse the evil and choose the good. Yea, Before the child shall know to refuse evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings thou hast a horror shall be forsaken. So he says, okay, this baby is going to be born, and before this baby is old enough to know right from wrong, those two kings that who you were scared of, Pekah and Rezin, they're going to be forsaken by their land. So this baby, as a sign, had to be born within the 65-year period so King Ahaz can know that they wouldn't defeat him. This is the context. So when the New Testament says this is about Jesus, that goes against this, because if this baby wasn't born within that 65-year period, Isaiah would be a false prophet. That's one. So how can this be about Jesus when Jesus didn't supposedly come to 700 to 800 years later?
Okay, I'm just reviewing it right now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be really critical and really technical.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say ask for a sign to help you believe that these kings will be destroyed. He just said ask for a sign.
What is the sign for?
For yourself.
For himself, for what though? What does he need a sign for right now?
Ask for a sign for yourself, the Lord your God.
I'm gonna let you wrestle with it a little bit. I understand this is your belief, so I'm gonna let you, try to wrestle with it. So what?
If verse 16 said, "Before the boy knows enough to refuse evil and good," so technically, if the Messiah came after this event, that would be true. But I see where you're standing on the 65 years.
Yeah, because again, the baby has to be.
I see what you're saying.
The baby has to be born before those two kings are forsaken, and the two kings are the Pekah and Rezin from verse 1. And in the Bible, when we go to Kings, we have the death or the unaliving of Pekah and Rezin. We have the completion of this prophecy. And then what's also interesting, when you continue reading, curd and honey shall he eat when he knoweth to refuse the evil and choose the good. Yea, before the child shall know to refuse evil and choose the good, the land who two kings thou hast a horror of shall be forsaken. Verse 17, and the Lord shall bring upon thee and upon thy people, upon their fathers, days that has not come from the day Ephraim departed from Judah, even the king of Assyria. So he lets you know the king of Assyria is actually going to be the one that actually does it. And we know Jesus didn't live or didn't come during the time of Assyria. So Matthew is using this to tell you it's about Jesus, but there's no way possible. Anybody, like you just said, you have reading comprehension, you're an avid reader. It's no way this can be about Jesus.
Yeah, I got an A+ in elementary.
Yeah. And you don't have to, again, you go back and study it. You don't have to come up with an answer right now. So you can go back and study it and look on it.
I've studied it. I've studied this before, but I'm trying to see how you're tying the 65 years, and that person must be born within that 65 years.
All right, let me explain that to you. Right. So in
I hear your explanation. I'm just trying to, because you're saying that the child is a sign.
Well, this is how I'm tying it, right? So
yeah,
in the 65 years, it says, for the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years, Ephraim shall be broken and be not a people. So the king of Ephraim is a Pekah, right? According to this chapter, Pekah is the king of Ephraim. So it says within 65 years, Pekah and Ephraim, because Ephraim is the leader of Pekah, right? The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is Ramallah's son. That's Pekah. They're supposed to be broken within 65 years. Pekah and Ephraim. Right? So when we get down to verse 16, yea, before the child should to know to refuse evil and choose the good. So before this child is old enough, this child is born, but he has to be, how old would you say a child knows right from wrong?
When he was born in the ghetto, or
anyway, just any, yeah.
Brown up, bro. It all depends, man.
Any number you're comfortable with. Any number you're comfortable with. Let's say 5 or 6. So yea, before the child should know to refuse evil and choose the good, let's say age 5 or 6, the land whose 2 kings thou hast a horror of shall be forsaken. So before this child is 5 or 6 years old, these 2 kings shall be forsaken. The 2 kings are Pekah and Rezin. So Pekah and the Ephraim would have to be destroyed within 65 years. And the baby would be 5 or 6 before that happens. That's within the 65 years. It has to be within the 65 years.
Okay, so when he says, the question that you kind of stumped me on was 11. He said, ask for a sign for yourself, for the Lord your God.
And he said, no, I don't want a sign, but the Most High gave him one.
He said, like, make it as hard as possible. Deep as hell up. High 7, so whatever, how no matter how difficult it is. He said, now I ain't gonna put the Lord to the test. Listen now, house of David. Is it a trivial thing to you to try the patience of men, and that you would try the patience of God as well? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin should conceive and give birth to a son, and she should name him Emmanuel. And he will eat curds of honey every time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. Refuse evil and choose good. And for the boy knows enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be abandoned, and the Lord will bring on your people and your father's house such days have not come since the day of Ephraim separated from Judah, the days of King of Syria.
That baby literally has to be born before the 2 kings are forsaken of their land. And
so when I'm reading this, just if you start from the beginning, Ahaz is afraid that his kingdom is going to be taken away.
Yeah, by the Syrians and Ephraim.
By Syria, right?
And Ephraim.
Right, Ephraim. I mean, from the Rezin, right?
Rezin and Pekah. Yeah, they teamed up. They teamed up to go against them.
Establish their own king, and he wanted to destroy Judah. So I think the sign, and what I'm saying, this is what I'm reading, that God is saying, ask for a sign that your house will be established, that your house is going to stay. That you're not going to be afraid that you're going to be destroyed.
That it's not going to come to pass. What they got planned is not going to happen.
So I don't think it's about the destruction of the king. I think it's saying that I'm going to give you a sign that the kingdom of your kingdom is going to be established. It's going to stay established. The kingdom of Judah. Because remember, Judah wasn't destroyed at all. Israel was,
And how would it stay established, though?
Well, God is protecting them.
From his enemies, from Pekah and Rezin.
Because that's why he said, listen now, house of David. So God is saying he's fortifying the house of David by bringing in a miraculous, and this is what we say, a miraculous birth, and he will name him Emmanuel, which is Christ. Christ, God is with us. That's the Christmas. That's the New Testament interpretation of it.
I mean, it do mean God is with us, right? Because we got to remember,
saying like that's Jesus Christ.
You got to remember, they wanted to take the Davidic king. They wanted to take the Davidic king off the throne and put a new king up there. So God's telling them, no, I'm going to protect the house of David. It's not going to happen.
So that's what I'm saying. I think it's more of the sign is more of God assuring that the house of David was to be established, more than a sign for king, like the kings who are attacking Judah to be destroyed.
No, it's both, because remember, it says once the baby is born, those 2 kings are going to be forsaken of their land.
Before he's born.
But before he's 5, before you know the difference between right and wrong. So
if you take it at face value, if Christ was born, you know what 1400 years after this? I don't know.
700, about 700.
Yeah, 700 years. So he did technically.
He was after. He was born after the kings
Right.
were.
He said before the boy knows. Before the boy knows.
Mm-hmm.
So this got to happen before the boy knows how to do right or wrong.
Exactly.
So it's happened, and then technically before the Messiah came into the world, it did happen.
Yeah, but it will be a problem because if this is about Jesus, Jesus would have to been born back then, because before the baby knows the difference from right and wrong, those two kings had to be forsaken of their land. Pika and Rezin had to unalive and get forsaken for their land before the baby knew the difference from right and wrong. So if Jesus comes after they're forsaken, he can't be that baby, because it says before the baby is
before the baby knows
different from right and wrong, they would be forsaken.
So if he came after, that means that Christ didn't know any right or wrong at the time. Meaning what I'm saying, before it says before the boy know right enough to refuse evil and to choose good, knowing right from wrong, the kings had already been destroyed before Christ came, right?
Exactly, and that's not what the prophecy say. The prophecy, Christ would have had to come before the kings were forsaken. But in history, Jesus came after the kings were forsaken. He can't fit it because the baby would have been before the kings were forsaken. Hold on. Hey, y'all, stop all that noise out there. My bad.
Kevin Hart was right about us. That's what we do. We just yell. We don't want to get up and go out there. We just, hey.
Fact. No, that's a fact. And then what's also interesting, remember it says the baby would eat butter and honey, or butter and curd, in whatever translation you use.
He would eat curd and honey at the time he knows enough.
The reason why he's eating curd and honey, when you get down to verse 20, it says, "In that day shall the Lord shave with a razor that is higher in the parts beyond the river, even the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of his feet, it shall be swept away the beard. And it shall come to pass in that day that a man shall rear a young cow and 2 sheep, and it shall come to pass, for the abundance of milk they shall give, he shall eat curd, for curd and honey shall everyone eat that is left in the midst of the land." So this baby is eating curd and honey because when the king of Assyria comes, he's going to take everybody else, but the people that's left in the land going to stay there and eat curd and honey. So it's telling you that baby is going to be in the land after the king of Assyria comes and after he punishes. So this is done during the time of the Assyrians, when the Assyrians came and took the northern kingdom into exile, but Judah didn't go. So the Judites in the southern kingdom stayed in the land. That's why the baby eats curd and honey. There's no way this can be about Jesus. Jesus was not in the land. He was not born. He wasn't a baby during the time of Assyrians. There's no way. And I know what the New Testament is doing when they're using it. Like if you want me to give you some information on that.
Yeah, the insight is just trying to fulfill prophecy about the house of David.
Yeah.
You know, the Emmanuel God with us.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your insight on that?
So it's a style of writing that, especially during the first century and even before the first century, that Jews did. It's called Pesharim, or Midrash. So they would go into the Tanakh and they would use verses and reapply them to things in their life. For example, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, I was talking about this earlier. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's also this book called The First Messiah, the Messiah before Jesus. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, they go into the Tanakh. They use Pesharim, they use Deuteronomy, they use Isaiah 53, they use all these texts to apply them to the teacher of righteousness, who they felt like was their leader. They also reinterpret stuff for Melchizedek because they believe Melchizedek was going to be the one to come back and free them from the Jubilee. So this is how Jews wrote in their interpretation. So the writers of Matthew, they're Jews. They're using interpretation to say, yo, this is who we believe is the Messiah. So when you believe in the New Testament, you're believing someone's interpretation, and they're pretty much trying to paint a case of why they feel like this person is the Messiah. So again, you can believe the interpretation of them, but to hang your faith and everything upon men's interpretation is tricky. So again, they're using interpretation. They're reapplying stuff that's not about Jesus. They're applying it to him in Pesharim to say, yo, we believe this guy is the Messiah. And they all did that. When you look in Josephus used Pesharim to say that Vespasian was the Messiah. He used the numbers 22. When you go into the Jews, I forgot the rabbi name. He used Pesharim to say Bar Kokhba was the Messiah, right? So that's what they did. It's just a form of interpretation, and that's all the New Testament did.
So, what was the name of the guy? You said teacher of righteousness.
Yeah, teacher of right. He was the. You ever heard of the Essenes?
Yeah, the
Essenes. He was the person they felt like God sent as the Messiah. His name is the teacher of righteousness, and this is a good book on that. It's called the First Messiah: Investigating the Savior Before Christ. The teacher of righteousness was like 100 years before Jesus. His name is Michael Wise. He should be. I'm promoting his book. He need to be paying me. I don't even know this guy, but he translated the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he also wrote this book based on the Damascus document, the Thanksgiving hymn, the War Scroll, the Community Scroll, based on the writings of the Essenes. He wrote that book, but yeah, it's a good read. But yeah, it's just Pesharim. It's the same thing in what's that, Matthew chapter 2, when it says, out of Egypt, as the prophet said, out of Egypt I called my son. When you go to the Hosea, it's not talking about Jesus. It's talking about the children of Israel being called out of Egypt, but they reapply it to Jesus. So it's just Pesharim. That's why I don't believe in the New Testament, because I don't feel like Pesharim or interpretation is enough, especially when it comes to fulfilling prophecy about the Messiah.
I appreciate that. It's funny. I was actually trying to figure out what that was when they take the scripture and they see something, they apply it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you said it's Pesharim. How you spell that?
Pesharim is what? P-A. Let me double check. It's either P-A or P-E. Sharim.
P-E.
Hold on. Let me double check. Let me give you the right spelling. All right, Pesharim. P-E-S-H-A-R-I-M.
A-R-I.
Mm-hmm. It's called Pesharim. It's interpretation. But if you have any more questions, we can do one more, or we can just go, because I've been up here 3 hours. I want to get out here to these loud kids.
Oh no, man, go do your thing, man. Go ahead. Your pops right now.
And D, man, give me a follow, man. It was a good build. I like having respectful, cool builds, man. Feel free if you got any questions.
I already followed you, bro.
Indeed. All right, cool. I'll give you a follow back, man. So shalom. It was a nice build, and I'll catch you another time, man.
Absolutely, bro. Shalom, brother.
Shalom.